Most people move through life feeling like everything is harder than it should be. They work harder. They think more. They worry constantly about what might go wrong. Yet no matter how much effort they give, life still feels complicated. The strange thing is this: life itself is not always the problem. Often it is the way we understand life that makes it heavy. There is a simple law that quietly shapes almost everything around us. It influences our happiness, our struggles, our relationships, and even the way we see ourselves. Most people never notice it. They keep pushing, fighting, and resisting life without realizing that the rules they believe in are not the real ones. But once you understand this law, something powerful begins to happen. Confusion starts to fade. Decisions feel clearer. Problems stop feeling impossible. Life does not suddenly become perfect, but it becomes lighter, more understandable, more peaceful. In this audiobook, you will slowly uncover that law, and once you truly understand it, many things in your life will begin to make sense in a way they never did before. Chapter 1. The hidden rule that shapes your life. Most people believe life is complicated. They believe happiness requires perfect timing, perfect decisions, perfect circumstances. They spend years trying to control everything around them. They plan carefully. They worry about mistakes. They try to predict the future. Yet the more they try to control life, the heavier life feels. There is a quiet reason for this. Most people are living without understanding one simple rule that shapes nearly everything. It is not a rule written in books. It is not something taught clearly in school. But it is always working. This rule affects how you think, how you react, how you feel about the world. And when you understand it, something important begins to change. Life stops feeling like a constant struggle. To understand this rule, we must first look at how people normally live. Most people believe happiness will arrive later. They believe it will appear when something changes, when they get a better job, when they earn more money, when people finally respect them. So they wait. They believe life is something that will become easier one day, but that day often keeps moving further away. When one goal is reached, another appears. When one problem ends, a new one begins. The mind continues searching for the next improvement. This creates a quiet cycle, a cycle of chasing. People chase success. They chase approval. They chase comfort. But chasing rarely feels peaceful. The mind becomes restless. It keeps asking one question again and again. What is missing? This question seems harmless, but it slowly shapes how a person experiences life. Instead of seeing what is present, the mind keeps looking for what is absent. Instead of feeling calm, the mind feels incomplete. This is where the hidden rule begins to reveal itself. The rule is simple. Life does not become easier when everything around you changes. Life becomes easier when your relationship with life changes. This may sound small, but it changes everything. Most people believe peace will arrive when their problems disappear. But problems are part of being alive. No life is free from challenges. Even people who appear successful face struggles. They face uncertainty. They face loss. They face change. Life is always moving. And because life is always moving, stability cannot come from controlling every event. Control is limited. You cannot control every outcome. You cannot control every opinion. You cannot control every situation. Trying to do so creates tension. The mind becomes exhausted. Understanding the law of life means recognizing something important. Life becomes lighter when you stop trying to control everything. This does not mean becoming careless. It does not mean giving up on goals. It means understanding where your true power lies. Your power is not in controlling life. Your power is in responding to life. This is a quiet shift, but it changes how everything feels. When you believe you must control everything, every problem feels threatening. Every mistake feels dangerous. Every uncertainty feels stressful. But when you understand that life will always include uncertainty, your mind begins to relax. You stop fighting reality. You start working with it. This is the beginning of wisdom. The hidden law of life is not about forcing the world to behave differently. It is about understanding how the world already works. Life moves in cycles. Sometimes things go well. Sometimes things become difficult. Sometimes you feel strong. Sometimes you feel lost. These changes are natural. They are part of the rhythm of life. But many people resist this rhythm. They want life to remain comfortable all the time. When comfort disappears, they believe something is wrong. They believe they are failing. But discomfort is not failure. It is simply part of movement. Every meaningful growth in life comes through discomfort. Learning a skill feels difficult at first. Changing habits feels uncomfortable. Facing fears feels heavy. But these experiences are not signs of a broken life. They are signs of a developing life. When people understand this, something powerful happens. They stop seeing every challenge as a disaster. They start seeing challenges as moments of learning. This change removes a great amount of pressure. Pressure often comes from unrealistic expectations. People expect life to always be smooth, but smoothness is temporary. Movement is constant. Understanding this movement helps you stay balanced. Instead of reacting with panic, you respond with awareness. Instead of rushing to escape every problem, you observe what the problem is teaching. This does not mean problems become enjoyable, but they become understandable, and understanding reduces suffering. Another important part of this law is acceptance. Acceptance is often misunderstood. Many people believe acceptance means giving up, but true acceptance is very different. Acceptance means recognizing reality clearly. When you see reality clearly, you can respond wisely. Imagine trying to solve a problem while denying it exists. That would create confusion. But when you accept the situation honestly, your mind becomes calmer, clarity appears. From clarity, better choices emerge. Acceptance removes unnecessary struggle. Many struggles come from resistance. When life does not match expectations, the mind resists. It says life should be different. It says things should not have happened this way. But reality does not change through resistance. Reality changes through action and understanding. Acceptance opens the door to both. Once you accept the present moment, you can begin improving it. Without acceptance, improvement becomes impossible. This is why understanding the law of life makes things easier. You stop fighting battles that cannot be won. You stop exhausting yourself with constant resistance. Instead, you focus your energy where it truly matters. Your choices, your mindset, your response. These are the areas where change is possible. This understanding brings freedom. Freedom from the pressure of perfection. Freedom from the illusion that life must always be predictable. Freedom from the belief that happiness exists only in the future. When this pressure fades, something else appears. Peace. Not a dramatic peace. Not a perfect life, but a steady calm. A calm that allows you to face life as it comes, with curiosity instead of fear, with patience instead of panic, with awareness instead of resistance. This calm does not remove every difficulty, but it transforms how difficulties feel. Challenges become manageable. Uncertainty becomes less frightening, and everyday moments become easier to appreciate. Understanding the law of life does not happen in a single moment. It grows slowly. Each experience teaches a new part of it. Each reflection deepens your understanding. Over time, you begin to notice something. Life still includes problems, but those problems no longer control your peace. You begin to move through life with greater balance, greater patience, greater clarity. This is the beginning of a simpler life, not because life becomes perfect, but because you finally understand how life works. And once that understanding begins to grow, many things that once felt heavy start to feel lighter. The journey into this understanding has only begun. As you continue, you will see more clearly how this law quietly shapes everything you experience. And with each step, life will begin to feel a little easier to carry. Chapter 2. Why most people fight against life. Most people do not realize they are fighting life. They wake up each day with plans. They carry expectations in their mind. They imagine how things should happen. But life rarely follows those expectations perfectly. A plan changes. Someone disappoints them. A problem appears without warning. When this happens, the mind reacts quickly. It begins to resist. It says this should not be happening. It says things were supposed to go differently. This reaction feels natural. But this quiet resistance creates much of the stress people experience. Life itself is not always the cause of suffering. The struggle often comes from fighting what has already happened. Think about a simple example. You are stuck in traffic. The moment cannot be changed. The road is crowded. Cars are not moving. Yet the mind begins to complain. It becomes impatient. It becomes frustrated. Nothing about the situation improves, but the emotional weight becomes heavier. This is resistance in action. Resistance is the mind refusing to accept the present moment. It keeps insisting reality should be different, but reality does not change because of resistance. It only increases tension. Many people believe resistance gives them control. They believe frustration means they care, but frustration does not solve problems. It only drains energy. Understanding this is important. And because when people learn to notice resistance, they can begin to release it. Releasing resistance does not mean liking every situation. It means recognizing what is already real. Once reality is clear, the mind becomes calmer. From that calm place, better decisions appear. This is where the law of life begins to reveal itself more clearly. Life becomes easier when you stop fighting what already exists. It becomes easier when you start working with the moment instead of against it. This shift may sound small, but it changes how the mind experiences everyday situations. Most people believe peace will arrive when life becomes smooth, but smooth moments never last forever. Change is constant. People change. Circumstances change. Plans change. When someone expects life to stay comfortable all the time, disappointment becomes unavoidable. But when someone understands that change is natural, they stop expecting permanent comfort. This reduces frustration. It creates flexibility. Flexibility is one of the greatest sources of inner strength. Flexible people adapt. Rigid people struggle. When the mind is rigid, every unexpected event feels like a threat. When the mind is flexible, unexpected events become manageable. The difference is not the situation. The difference is the response. Another reason people fight life is fear. Fear makes the mind imagine future problems. It creates stories about what might go wrong. These stories feel real. The body reacts as if the danger is already present. But most of the time, the imagined future never arrives exactly as expected. Still, the mind spends energy worrying. This constant anticipation creates exhaustion. Understanding the law of life helps reduce this fear because it teaches something important. You do not need to control every future moment to live peacefully. You only need to respond wisely when moments arrive. Life is always experienced in the present. Yet the mind often lives in the future. It imagines problems that do not yet exist. When you bring attention back to the present, much of that imagined pressure disappears. The present moment usually contains fewer problems than the mind predicts. Another reason people resist life is comparison. They compare their path with others. They see someone else succeed faster. They see someone else appear happier. This creates quiet dissatisfaction. The mind asks why life is easier for someone else. But comparison ignores something important. Every life contains invisible struggles. Every person faces challenges that others cannot see. When someone compares only the visible parts of life, the comparison becomes unfair. Understanding this reduces the need to compete with every moment. Life is not a race with others. It is a journey of understanding. Another powerful source of resistance is attachment to control. People like certainty. They want to know what will happen next. They want guarantees. But life rarely offers complete certainty. Even the most careful plans can change. When someone accepts that uncertainty is part of living, something interesting happens. Anxiety decreases, not because life becomes predictable, but because the mind stops demanding prediction. Instead of asking for guarantees, the mind becomes prepared for change. Preparation is different from control. Control tries to force outcomes. Preparation allows adaptation. Adaptation is far more powerful. Another reason people struggle is the belief that life must always be fair. People want effort to always produce reward. They want kindness to always be returned. But life is not perfectly balanced in every moment. Sometimes effort does not bring immediate results. Sometimes good people face difficulties. When someone expects perfect fairness at all times, disappointment grows. But understanding the law of life changes this expectation. It teaches patience. Results often take time. Growth often happens slowly. What feels unfair in the short term can lead to wisdom in the long term. This understanding reduces bitterness. It creates resilience. Resilient people do not collapse when things go wrong. They adjust. They continue moving forward. Another source of resistance is the belief that happiness must always be intense. Many people think happiness should feel exciting all the time, but real happiness often appears in quiet forms. Calm mornings, meaningful conversations, moments of peace. When someone expects constant excitement, they miss these quiet joys. Understanding the law of life helps people appreciate ordinary moments. And ordinary moments make up most of life. Another reason people fight life is identity. People create fixed ideas about who they are. They say they are unlucky, or shy, or unsuccessful. These labels become mental walls. They limit possibility. But life is always changing, and people can change too. When someone understands this, identity becomes flexible. Flexibility opens new opportunities. Another important part of this law is patience. Many people want immediate transformation. They want problems solved quickly, but meaningful change often requires time. Skills take time to build. Understanding takes time to deepen. When someone becomes patient with growth, frustration decreases. Patience allows progress to unfold naturally. Another source of resistance is the belief that mistakes should not happen, but mistakes are essential for learning. Without mistakes, growth would stop. Every skill improves through error and adjustment. When someone stops fearing mistakes, life becomes less stressful. Mistakes become lessons instead of evidence of failure. Another way people fight life is by holding on to the past. They replay old events. They wish things had happened differently. But the past cannot be changed. Only the meaning of the past can change. When someone reflects with understanding instead of regret, the past becomes a teacher, not a burden. This transformation brings relief. Understanding the law of life means accepting movement. Everything moves. Emotions move. Situations move. People move. Nothing stays the same forever. When someone stops expecting permanence, they become more balanced. They enjoy good moments while they last, and they face difficult moments knowing they will also pass. This balance creates peace, not because life becomes perfect, but because the mind stops fighting every change. When resistance fades, energy returns. That energy can be used for creativity, for growth, for connection. Instead of being trapped in constant struggle, the mind becomes available for living. This is one of the greatest gifts of understanding the law of life. You stop treating every obstacle as an enemy. You begin seeing life as a process that includes learning, adapting, and growing. And when you stop fighting the process, life begins to feel lighter. Not because problems disappear, but because your relationship with those problems has changed, and that change makes everything a little easier to carry. Chapter 3. The difference between control and influence. Many people spend their lives trying to control everything around them. They want to control outcomes. They want to control other people's opinions. They want to control how the future unfolds. This desire is understandable. Control feels safe. Control feels predictable. But life rarely allows complete control. And when someone tries to control everything, frustration slowly grows. This is where an important understanding begins. There is a big difference between control and influence. Control means forcing something to happen exactly the way you want. Influence means guiding a situation in a direction, while accepting that the final outcome may still change. Most of life works through influence, not control. Yet many people behave as if control should always be possible. When reality does not match that expectation, stress appears. To understand this better, imagine planting a seed. You can place the seed in good soil. You can give it water. You can make sure it receives sunlight. These actions influence the growth of the plant. But you cannot force the seed to grow faster. You cannot control the weather. You cannot control every condition around it. You can only support the process. Life works in a similar way. You influence your actions, your effort, and your choices, but you cannot control every result. Many people confuse these two ideas. They believe if they work hard enough, they should control every outcome. When outcomes differ from expectations, they feel defeated. But the problem is not effort. The problem is misunderstanding the nature of life. Effort creates influence. It does not guarantee control. Understanding this reduces pressure. It allows people to focus on what they can actually shape: their actions, their attitude, their preparation. These areas belong to influence. Trying to control what belongs outside of influence creates exhaustion. Think about how often people try to control other people's opinions. They want everyone to like them. They want everyone to agree with them. They want to avoid criticism completely, but other people's thoughts are not within anyone's control. People see the world through their own experiences. They have their own expectations and beliefs. No matter how carefully someone behaves, some people will still disagree. Once this truth becomes clear, something changes. You stop wasting energy chasing universal approval. You focus on living according to your values instead. Values create direction. Approval creates dependence. When someone depends too much on approval, they lose their freedom. Understanding influence restores that freedom. Another area where people struggle with control is the future. The future feels uncertain, and uncertainty can feel uncomfortable. To reduce that discomfort, people try to predict everything. They plan every step. They imagine every possibility. Planning can be useful, but excessive planning often hides fear. Because no plan can control the future completely, unexpected things always happen. Opportunities appear. Challenges appear. Circumstances change. Understanding the difference between influence and control helps here too. You can influence the future by preparing. You can build skills. You can develop discipline. You can make thoughtful decisions. But the future will always include unknown elements. Accepting this makes the mind calmer. Instead of fearing uncertainty, you become ready for it. Preparation replaces anxiety. Another place where control often appears is in relationships. People sometimes try to control how others behave. They try to shape someone else's personality. They try to prevent others from making mistakes. But every person has their own path. You can support someone. You can advise someone. You can care deeply about someone. But you cannot control their choices. Trying to do so often creates conflict. Respecting influence instead of control creates healthier connections. Influence invites understanding. Control invites resistance. Another example appears in personal growth. Many people expect change to happen instantly. They want to develop confidence quickly. They want success without delay. But growth follows a natural rhythm. Just like a seed becoming a tree, personal change requires time. Effort influences growth, but time completes it. When someone expects immediate transformation, they become discouraged too quickly. Understanding influence brings patience. You begin to trust the process of improvement. Another area where people try to control life is through perfection. They want every action to be flawless. They fear making mistakes. But perfection is not realistic. Mistakes are part of learning. They reveal weaknesses. They reveal opportunities for improvement. When someone tries to control every mistake, they become afraid of trying new things. Fear blocks growth. Influence encourages experimentation. You try something. You observe the result. You adjust your approach. This cycle leads to mastery. Mastery grows through influence, not control. Another important part of this law is emotional influence. You cannot control every emotion that appears. Emotions rise naturally. They respond to situations, but you can influence how you respond to emotions. You can pause before reacting. You can observe feelings without letting them control behavior. This ability creates emotional strength. Instead of being pushed around by every feeling, you guide your responses. Another place where influence matters is attention. Attention is one of the most powerful tools you have. Where you place attention shapes your experience. If attention focuses constantly on problems, life feels heavy. If attention notices opportunities and learning, life feels more hopeful. You cannot control every situation, but you can influence where attention rests. And that choice affects how you experience life. Another important lesson appears when things go wrong. Sometimes effort does not lead to success immediately. Plans fail. Goals take longer than expected. When someone believes they should control outcomes, failure feels personal. But when someone understands influence, failure becomes information. It becomes feedback. You look at what happened. You learn from it. You adjust your strategy, and you try again. This mindset keeps growth alive. It removes the pressure of perfection. Another important idea is responsibility. Influence works best when people accept responsibility for their actions. Responsibility means recognizing what belongs to you. Your effort belongs to you. Your attitude belongs to you. Your decisions belong to you. When you take responsibility for these areas, life becomes more meaningful. You stop blaming circumstances for everything. At the same time, you stop blaming yourself for things you cannot control. This balance creates emotional stability. You act where action is possible. You accept what lies outside your reach. This balance is one of the most peaceful states a person can experience. Many people believe peace comes from controlling life, but peace actually comes from understanding life. When you know where influence ends and control begins, confusion disappears. You stop fighting impossible battles. You stop exhausting yourself with unrealistic expectations. Instead, you focus your energy wisely. You invest effort where it matters. You release attachment where it does not. This creates a lighter way of living. You still pursue goals. You still care deeply about the future, but you no longer carry the heavy belief that everything must unfold exactly as planned. You allow life to move. You guide it with intention. You adapt when needed. This balance between effort and acceptance is powerful. It transforms how problems feel. It transforms how success feels. It even transforms how failure feels. Life becomes less about controlling outcomes and more about participating in the process. And once you understand this difference, many struggles begin to lose their weight, because you finally stop demanding control where only influence exists. And that understanding makes life far easier to carry forward. Chapter 4. Why expectations create unnecessary struggle. Most people carry invisible expectations throughout the day. They expect conversations to go smoothly. They expect plans to unfold the way they imagined. They expect people to behave in certain ways. These expectations feel normal. In fact, many people do not even notice them. But expectations quietly shape how we experience life. When reality matches expectation, the mind feels satisfied. But when reality moves in a different direction, frustration appears. This frustration often feels like life is unfair. Yet the problem is rarely the situation itself. The problem is the gap between expectation and reality. This gap is where much of human suffering begins. To understand this more clearly, imagine planning a simple day. You expect the morning to be calm. You expect to finish certain tasks. You expect everything to move forward without interruption. But then something unexpected happens. A delay appears. A problem requires attention. Someone changes your plans. Suddenly the mind reacts. It says the day is ruined. But if you look carefully, the difficulty did not come from the event itself. It came from the expectation that things should have gone differently. Expectations are powerful because they create invisible rules for reality. The mind says things should happen in a certain way, But life rarely follows those rules perfectly. This does not mean expectations are always bad. Expectations can guide effort. They can help you aim for improvement. But when expectations become rigid, they create tension. Rigid expectations leave no space for change, and change is one of the most constant parts of life. Life moves. Plans shift. People behave unpredictably. When someone demands that life must follow a fixed path, disappointment becomes inevitable. Understanding the law of life helps people soften their expectations. Instead of demanding certainty, they allow flexibility. Flexibility changes how the mind reacts to events. Instead of saying this should not happen, the mind begins to ask, what can be done next? This shift creates calm. Another area where expectations create struggle is in relationships. People often expect others to behave exactly as they imagine. They expect understanding without explanation. They expect kindness in every moment. They expect agreement. But every person carries their own experiences and emotions. Even people who care deeply about each other misunderstand sometimes. When expectations are unrealistic, small misunderstandings feel like betrayal. But when expectations become more flexible, relationships become stronger. You stop demanding perfection. You begin allowing human complexity. This makes communication easier. Another common expectation appears in personal success. Many people expect progress to happen quickly. They expect effort to produce immediate results. But meaningful growth usually happens slowly. Skills develop over time. Understanding deepens gradually. When someone expects instant transformation, they often give up too soon. But when someone understands that growth follows a natural rhythm, patience appears. Patience allows effort to continue long enough for real change to happen. Expectations also influence how people see themselves. Some people expect themselves to always feel confident. They believe they should always make the right decision. They believe they should never struggle. These expectations create unnecessary pressure, because no human being lives without moments of doubt. Even successful people experience uncertainty. Even confident people make mistakes. When someone expects perfection from themselves, they become harsh. They judge every mistake as evidence of failure. But when expectations become realistic, mistakes become part of learning. Learning replaces self-criticism. Another place where expectations create struggle is in the future. Many people imagine a future where everything finally becomes easy. They believe happiness will arrive once certain goals are achieved. They say they will relax when life becomes stable. But life rarely becomes permanently stable. New opportunities appear. New challenges appear. Waiting for perfect conditions delays happiness. Understanding the law of life helps people change this mindset. Instead of waiting for perfect circumstances, they learn to appreciate present moments. Peace begins to exist alongside effort. You can still pursue goals, but you do not postpone happiness until those goals are completed. This creates balance. Another type of expectation involves fairness. People often expect life to reward effort immediately. They believe hard work should always produce visible results. When results take longer, frustration grows. But life is not always immediate. Sometimes effort creates invisible progress. Skills are improving beneath the surface. Understanding is developing quietly. When someone expects instant reward, they may stop just before results appear. But when someone understands that progress often happens gradually, persistence becomes easier. Persistence is one of the greatest advantages in life. Another expectation people carry involves comfort. They expect life to feel comfortable most of the time. But growth often appears through discomfort. Learning something new feels awkward at first. Taking risks feels uncertain. Facing challenges feels difficult. Discomfort does not mean something is wrong. Often it means something meaningful is happening. When someone understands this, discomfort stops feeling like a signal of failure. It becomes a signal of movement. Movement means progress. Expectations also affect emotional experiences. Some people expect themselves to feel happy all the time. When sadness appears, they believe something is broken. But emotions are naturally changing. Happiness comes and goes. Calm comes and goes. Even sadness can carry important messages. It can show where attention is needed. It can reveal what matters deeply. When someone stops expecting constant happiness, emotional balance improves. You allow feelings to move without panic. Another powerful shift happens when expectations become lighter. Lighter expectations create more openness. You become curious about what life brings. Instead of demanding outcomes, you participate in experiences. Curiosity replaces disappointment. Curiosity invites learning. Learning keeps life interesting. Another important lesson is that expectations often come from comparison. People watch others and assume their life should look similar. They expect success at the same pace. They expect similar opportunities. But every life unfolds differently. Circumstances vary. Timing varies. Understanding this removes unnecessary pressure. You begin focusing on your own path. Another benefit of reducing rigid expectations is resilience. Resilient people adapt quickly. They do not collapse when plans change. They adjust their direction. This ability makes life easier, not because problems disappear, but because adaptation becomes natural. Another helpful approach is replacing expectations with intentions. Intentions guide effort without demanding specific outcomes. For example, instead of expecting a perfect day, you can intend to approach the day with patience. Instead of expecting immediate success, you can intend to keep improving. Intentions create direction without creating pressure. They allow life to unfold while you remain engaged. Another important part of this law is awareness. Many expectations operate quietly. You may not notice them until something disrupts them. When frustration appears, it can be helpful to ask a simple question. What expectation was I holding? Often the answer reveals something interesting. The mind expected certainty where none existed. Seeing this clearly reduces frustration. Over time, awareness makes expectations more flexible. Flexible expectations create a lighter mind. The mind stops demanding perfection. It stops demanding predictability. Instead, it becomes prepared for change. Prepared minds handle life more easily. Another result of this shift is gratitude. When expectations soften, small moments feel more valuable. You notice kindness. You notice beauty. You notice quiet opportunities. Gratitude grows naturally. Gratitude changes perspective. Life begins to feel fuller. Not because everything becomes ideal, but because you stop measuring reality against rigid expectations. You begin experiencing life directly. This direct experience carries a quiet peace. Peace that does not depend on everything going perfectly. Peace that remains, even when plans change. Understanding expectations is one of the most important parts of understanding life, because expectations shape perception. When expectations become flexible, perception becomes clearer. And when perception becomes clearer, life becomes easier to navigate. Not because life becomes simple, but because your mind stops creating unnecessary struggle. And that small change makes a very big difference in how life feels every day. Chapter 5. The power of accepting what is. Many people misunderstand the idea of acceptance. When they hear the word, they imagine weakness. They imagine giving up. They imagine losing ambition. But true acceptance is not about surrendering your goals. It is about seeing reality clearly. Without clear vision, wise action becomes impossible. Imagine trying to navigate a road while refusing to look at the map. No matter how determined you are, confusion will follow. Acceptance works like a map. It helps you see where you truly are. Once you know where you are, you can decide where to go next. Without acceptance, the mind stays trapped in resistance. Resistance is the habit of arguing with reality. It sounds like a voice inside the mind, saying things should be different. It says this situation should not exist. It says this mistake should not have happened. But the moment already exists. Arguing with it changes nothing. It only drains energy. Acceptance stops this unnecessary argument. It does not mean liking every situation. It means acknowledging the truth of the moment. This simple shift creates space in the mind. In that space, clarity appears. And from clarity, better choices become possible. Think about how people react to mistakes. When a mistake happens, many people panic. They replay the moment again and again. They wish they could erase what already happened, but the past cannot be rewritten. The only useful step is learning from it. Acceptance makes that step possible. Once you accept that the mistake happened, the mind becomes calm enough to ask a helpful question. What can I learn from this? Learning transforms mistakes into teachers. Resistance turns them into burdens. Another example appears in difficult emotions. Sometimes sadness appears. Sometimes frustration rises. Many people try to push these feelings away. They believe negative emotions should not exist. But emotions are natural responses. They move through the mind like waves. When someone resists an emotion, the feeling often becomes stronger. When someone allows the feeling to exist without panic, it usually fades more quickly. Acceptance allows emotions to move. Resistance traps them. This understanding changes how you experience difficult moments. Instead of fighting every feeling, you observe it. Observation creates distance. Distance creates calm. Another place where acceptance matters is change. Life constantly changes. People move away. Jobs evolve. Situations shift. Some changes bring excitement. Others bring discomfort. When someone expects life to remain stable forever, every change feels threatening. But when someone accepts change as natural, adaptation becomes easier. Acceptance creates flexibility. Flexibility allows growth. This does not mean ignoring challenges. It means facing them without unnecessary resistance. Acceptance also improves decision-making. When the mind refuses to accept reality, decisions become distorted. For example, imagine someone ignoring financial difficulties. They avoid looking at the numbers. They pretend everything is fine. This denial delays action. But once the situation is accepted clearly, practical solutions can appear. Acceptance brings honesty. Honesty brings clarity. Clarity creates solutions. Another powerful result of acceptance is emotional freedom. When someone stops fighting every situation, emotional energy becomes available again. Energy that was once spent on frustration can now be used for creativity, for problem solving, for building meaningful experiences. Acceptance releases trapped energy. Many people worry that acceptance will remove motivation. They fear that if they accept a situation, they will stop trying to improve it. But the opposite is usually true. When resistance disappears, effort becomes more focused. Instead of wasting energy complaining, energy moves toward action. Acceptance removes distraction. It allows purposeful movement. Another example appears in personal identity. Many people carry labels about themselves. They say they are not talented enough. They say they are unlucky. These beliefs often come from past experiences. But identity is not fixed. People grow and change. Acceptance of the present self does not mean staying the same. It means starting from honesty. When someone accepts their current abilities clearly, improvement becomes easier. Without acceptance, growth begins from illusion. Illusion creates confusion. Another place where acceptance helps is in relationships. People sometimes try to change others completely. They want others to behave exactly as they imagine. But every person has their own personality, their own habits. Trying to control someone's nature creates tension. Acceptance does not mean tolerating harmful behavior. It means recognizing who someone truly is. From that recognition, wiser boundaries can be created. Boundaries built on reality are stronger. Boundaries built on denial collapse. Acceptance also improves patience. When someone expects everything to happen quickly, frustration grows. But when someone accepts that meaningful progress takes time, patience appears naturally. Patience protects motivation. Without patience, effort fades too early. Another powerful aspect of acceptance is presence. Resistance pulls the mind into the past or future. It asks why something happened, or it worries about what might happen next. Acceptance brings attention back to the present moment. The present moment is where life actually unfolds. When attention returns to now, the mind becomes calmer. Calm attention improves awareness. Awareness reveals opportunities that anxiety often hides. Another important idea is that acceptance and change work together. First you accept reality, then you influence what can be improved. Without acceptance, improvement becomes chaotic. With acceptance, improvement becomes strategic. Another way to understand this is through nature. A sailor cannot control the wind, but the sailor can adjust the sails. Acceptance means recognizing the wind. Influence means adjusting the sails. Together they create movement. Another benefit of acceptance is emotional resilience. Resilient people recover more quickly from difficulty. They do not deny pain, but they also do not remain trapped in it. They acknowledge what happened, then they look forward. This ability protects mental strength. Another place where acceptance helps is uncertainty. Life always includes unknown elements. No one can predict every outcome. When someone demands certainty, anxiety grows. But when someone accepts uncertainty as part of life, curiosity replaces fear. Curiosity opens the mind. Fear closes it. Another powerful shift appears in everyday moments. Many frustrations come from small situations, a delay, a disagreement, an inconvenience. When someone resists these moments, stress accumulates, but when someone accepts them calmly, the mind remains steady. This steadiness improves overall well-being. Acceptance also improves relationships with oneself. Many people criticize themselves constantly. They compare themselves with unrealistic ideals. Acceptance softens this harsh voice. Self-acceptance creates inner stability. From stability, confidence grows naturally. Another important lesson is that acceptance is a practice, and it does not appear instantly. Sometimes the mind returns to resistance. That is normal. Each moment offers a new opportunity to accept reality again. Over time, acceptance becomes easier. The mind learns that resistance rarely improves anything. It learns that calm observation leads to better outcomes. This learning gradually transforms how life feels. Situations that once caused panic begin to feel manageable. Challenges still appear, but they no longer feel overwhelming, because acceptance has created space between the event and the reaction. In that space, wisdom lives. And wisdom changes everything. When you accept what is, you free yourself from unnecessary struggle. You gain the clarity to respond instead of react. You begin to move with life instead of against it. And when that shift happens, life begins to feel lighter. Not because problems vanish, but because your mind has stopped carrying the extra weight of resistance. That is the quiet power of acceptance. And once you experience it, the law of life becomes easier to understand. Chapter 6. Why Patience Changes Everything. One of the most misunderstood strengths in life is patience. Many people see patience as weakness. They imagine it means waiting without action. They imagine it means giving up control. But true patience is not passive. It is a form of quiet strength. Patience allows effort to continue without panic. It allows progress to unfold without forcing results. Most people struggle because they want everything immediately. They want quick success, quick change, quick solutions. But life rarely moves at the speed of impatience. Growth follows its own rhythm. Seeds do not become trees overnight. Skills do not develop in a single attempt. Understanding does not appear in one moment. Everything meaningful in life requires time. When people ignore this rhythm, frustration grows. They begin something new with excitement. But when results do not appear quickly, motivation fades. They believe something is wrong. Often nothing is wrong. The process simply needs more time. Patience protects the process. Without patience, many good efforts end too early. Think about learning any skill. The beginning always feels awkward. Progress feels slow. Mistakes happen often. Without patience, these early challenges feel discouraging. But with patience, those same challenges become steps forward. Each mistake teaches something. Each attempt builds experience. Over time, improvement becomes visible, but only if patience allows the effort to continue. Another place where patience matters is emotional healing. Life includes painful experiences, loss, disappointment, change. These experiences leave emotional marks. Healing does not happen instantly. The mind needs time to process events. When someone demands immediate recovery, pressure increases. But when someone allows healing to move at its own pace, peace slowly returns. Patience gives emotions space to settle. Another area where patience transforms life is decision-making. Impatient decisions often come from urgency. The mind wants relief from uncertainty, so it rushes toward the first available option. But rushed decisions can create new problems. Patience allows observation. Observation reveals more information. More information improves choices. Patience gives the mind time to see clearly. Another place where impatience causes struggle is comparison. People watch others succeed and feel left behind. They believe progress should happen faster, but every path unfolds differently. Some people discover opportunities early. Others develop strength through longer journeys. Neither path is wrong. When someone becomes patient with their own timing, comparison loses its power. Focus returns to personal growth. Another powerful effect of patience appears in relationships. Human connections require understanding. Understanding grows through time and experience. When people expect instant harmony, small misunderstandings become large conflicts. But patience allows communication to develop slowly. Trust grows gradually. Respect deepens through consistent actions. Patience creates stronger relationships. Another area where patience matters is financial success. Many people want quick wealth. They look for shortcuts. They chase sudden opportunities. But lasting financial stability usually grows through steady effort, through saving, through learning, through discipline. Patience protects long-term thinking. Impatience often leads to risky choices. Another place where patience creates strength is in personal identity. People often feel pressure to become someone impressive quickly. They want to prove themselves, but identity grows through experience, through mistakes, through reflection. Patience allows identity to develop naturally. Instead of forcing an image, you become who you truly are. Another important part of patience is emotional balance. Impatience often creates anxiety. The mind becomes restless. It constantly asks when things will improve. This restlessness drains energy. Patience replaces that tension with calm focus. You continue moving forward without needing immediate proof of success. Another area where patience helps is learning from failure. Failure often carries valuable information, but when someone reacts with impatience, they may ignore the lesson. They rush to escape the feeling of disappointment. Patience allows reflection. Reflection reveals insight. Insight improves the next attempt. Another powerful aspect of patience is trust. Patience grows from trusting the process of life, not blind trust, but realistic trust. You understand that growth takes time. You understand that effort accumulates gradually. This trust creates stability. Another example appears in physical health. Healthy habits produce results slowly. Exercise strengthens the body over months and years. Nutrition supports long-term well-being. Impatient approaches often seek quick transformation, but quick solutions rarely last. Patience builds sustainable change. Another important idea is that patience protects creativity. Creative work requires exploration. Ideas develop through experimentation. When someone demands immediate perfection, creativity becomes blocked, but patience allows ideas to evolve. Mistakes become part of the creative process. Another benefit of patience is clarity. Time reveals patterns. Situations that once felt confusing often become understandable later. Patience allows the mind to observe these patterns. Clarity appears naturally when time is allowed to work. Another area where patience changes life is confidence. Confidence grows through repeated experience. It develops when someone continues despite uncertainty. Impatience interrupts this process. But patience allows confidence to grow quietly. Another powerful effect of patience is resilience. Resilient people do not collapse when progress feels slow. They continue forward. They understand that setbacks are temporary. This mindset protects motivation. Another place where patience brings peace is daily life. Many frustrations come from rushing. Traffic feels unbearable when someone is in a hurry. Delays feel painful when someone demands perfect timing. Patience softens these experiences. You move through the day with greater calm. Another important lesson is that patience improves listening. When someone listens patiently, they understand others more deeply. Rushed listening leads to misunderstanding. Patient listening builds stronger communication. Another area where patience matters is spiritual understanding. Deep understanding of life rarely appears instantly. Wisdom develops through reflection, through observation, through experience. Patience allows these insights to mature. Another important truth is that impatience often comes from fear. Fear that time is running out. Fear that opportunities will disappear. But rushing rarely improves outcomes. Calm persistence often achieves more. Patience replaces fear with steady effort. Another way to understand patience is through nature. Nature never rushes. Seasons follow a cycle. Growth follows a process. Yet everything important still happens. Life works the same way. When you align with this rhythm, pressure fades. Another benefit of patience is gratitude. When someone slows down, they notice small progress. They notice improvement. They notice learning. Gratitude appears naturally. Gratitude strengthens motivation. Another important idea is that patience does not mean inactivity. It means consistent action without panic. You continue doing what matters. You simply release the need for immediate results. This balance is powerful. Action combined with patience creates sustainable success. Another challenge people face is staying patient during uncertainty. Uncertainty makes waiting difficult, but patience allows you to remain calm until clarity appears. This calm prevents unnecessary mistakes. Another important lesson is that patience improves perspective. With time, problems often shrink. Situations that once felt overwhelming become manageable. Patience allows perspective to grow. Another powerful truth is that life rewards consistency more than intensity. Small actions repeated over time create remarkable results. Patience allows those small actions to accumulate. Another final idea is that patience protects peace. When someone accepts that life unfolds gradually, the mind becomes relaxed. There is no need to rush every moment. You continue moving forward with steady effort. And that steady effort slowly transforms life. Patience is not about waiting for life to begin. It is about understanding that life is already unfolding, and when you learn to move with its rhythm instead of against it, everything begins to feel easier. Chapter 7. The Quiet Power of Letting Go. Many people carry more weight in their minds than they realize. Not physical weight, emotional weight, memories of past mistakes, old disappointments, unfinished arguments, regret over choices that cannot be changed. These memories often stay active inside the mind. They appear again and again, sometimes during quiet moments, sometimes in the middle of a busy day. The mind returns to them as if repeating the past might somehow change it. But the past does not change. Holding on to it only keeps the pain alive. This is where another important part of the law of life appears. Life becomes easier when you learn how to let go. Letting go does not mean forgetting everything. It means releasing the emotional grip that the past holds over the present. Many people resist this idea. They believe holding on to past events protects them. They believe remembering every mistake will prevent future errors. But constant attachment to the past often creates more suffering than wisdom. Wisdom comes from learning, not from endless replay. Imagine carrying a heavy bag everywhere you go. At first, the weight may feel manageable, but over time, the burden becomes exhausting. Eventually, even small movements feel difficult. Emotional attachment to the past works the same way. Each regret adds weight. Each resentment adds tension. Each unfinished memory occupies space in the mind. When someone finally sets that weight down, something changes immediately. movement becomes easier, breathing becomes easier, thinking becomes clearer. Letting go works like setting down that heavy bag. It creates space. Space for new experiences, space for peace. One of the most common things people hold on to is regret. Regret often comes from thinking about how life could have been different. The mind imagines better choices. It imagines better outcomes. But these imagined versions of the past are illusions. They exist only in the mind. No one has the ability to return to an earlier moment and choose again. Once someone accepts this truth, regret begins to lose its power. The only meaningful question becomes this: what can I learn from that experience? Learning transforms regret into wisdom. Another emotional weight people carry is resentment. Resentment grows when someone feels hurt or treated unfairly. The mind replays the moment again and again. It holds on to anger, but resentment rarely hurts the person who caused the pain. It mainly harms the person carrying it. The longer resentment stays, the heavier it becomes. Letting go of resentment does not mean approving harmful behavior. It means freeing yourself from the emotional prison created by anger. Forgiveness often becomes part of this process. Forgiveness is not about pretending nothing happened. It is about choosing peace over endless conflict in the mind. Another thing people struggle to release is identity from the past. Sometimes people define themselves by old experiences. They say they are the person who failed, or the person who was rejected, or the person who made a terrible mistake. But identity is not fixed. People grow. People change. The person you are today is not exactly the same as the person you were years ago. Letting go of outdated identities creates freedom. It allows new possibilities to appear. Another place where letting go becomes powerful is control. Many people hold tightly to situations they cannot change. They try to force outcomes. They try to predict every possibility. This constant tension creates stress. But when someone releases the need for complete control, the mind relaxes. Life still includes effort, but the effort becomes lighter. Instead of forcing everything, you begin guiding what you can influence. Another area where letting go is essential is fear of the future. The mind often imagines negative possibilities. It worries about failure. It worries about loss. But most imagined fears never happen exactly as predicted. Letting go of constant worry brings attention back to the present moment. The present moment usually contains more stability than the imagined future. Another important lesson about letting go is that it does not happen instantly. The mind often returns to old thoughts. Old emotions may appear again. This is normal. Letting go is a gradual practice. Each time the mind returns to the past, you gently bring attention back to the present. Over time, the emotional attachment becomes weaker. Another benefit of letting go is improved relationships. When someone holds on to past conflicts, every conversation becomes tense. Old arguments reappear. Trust becomes fragile. But when people release old grievances, communication becomes easier. The relationship gains a fresh start. Letting go allows space for understanding. Another place where letting go changes life is ambition. Many people chase success with constant pressure. They attach their worth to outcomes. When success is delayed, they feel discouraged. But when someone releases the need to prove their value constantly, ambition becomes healthier. Effort continues. But the emotional pressure disappears. Another powerful shift appears in creativity. Creative work requires openness. When the mind is crowded with past worries, creativity struggles to emerge. Letting go clears mental space. Ideas begin to flow more naturally. Another benefit of letting go is inner peace. Peace is not created by controlling every situation. Peace appears when the mind stops fighting what cannot be changed. This does not mean life becomes perfect, but it means the mind stops carrying unnecessary burdens. Another important truth is that letting go requires courage. Holding on to the past sometimes feels safer. It feels familiar. But growth often requires stepping away from familiar pain. Letting go creates uncertainty, but it also creates freedom. Freedom to see life with fresh eyes. Freedom to experience new possibilities. Another way to understand letting go is through nature. Trees release their leaves each season. They do not hold on to what has already served its purpose. By releasing the old, they make space for new growth. Human life follows a similar pattern. Experiences arrive, they teach lessons, and then they must be released. Holding on to every past moment prevents new growth. Another powerful realization appears when someone practices letting go regularly. Life begins to feel lighter. Small problems no longer feel overwhelming. The mind becomes calmer. Clarity improves. This clarity makes decisions easier. Another important aspect of letting go is compassion. People sometimes hold on to anger toward themselves. They judge themselves harshly. But self-compassion softens this internal struggle. You recognize that everyone makes mistakes. Everyone learns slowly. This understanding allows healing. Another place where letting go brings freedom is expectation. When someone releases rigid expectations, disappointment decreases. Life becomes more surprising. Curiosity replaces frustration. Another benefit of letting go is emotional flexibility. Flexible minds adapt more easily. They recover faster from setbacks. They see challenges as temporary. This resilience protects long-term well-being. Another important truth is that letting go does not erase memories. Memories remain, but they lose their emotional weight. They become part of your story without controlling your present. Another powerful shift occurs when someone realizes that peace does not come from fixing every past event. Peace comes from accepting that the past has already shaped you. It has given you lessons. It has given you strength. Once those lessons are understood, the past can finally rest. Life then becomes an open path again. Not a place where you drag old burdens forward, but a place where you move freely, with curiosity, with patience, with awareness. Letting go is not about losing something important. It is about reclaiming the energy that the past once held. And when that energy returns, life begins to feel much lighter. You begin to walk forward without unnecessary weight. And that freedom allows everything else in life to become easier. Chapter 8. The simple truth about happiness. Many people spend their entire lives searching for happiness. They believe happiness is something far away, something that appears only after certain goals are reached. They say they will be happy when they earn more money, when they find the right relationship, when life finally becomes stable. This belief creates a constant chase. The mind keeps moving forward, always waiting for a better moment. But something interesting happens during this chase. The moment happiness is expected to arrive, another condition appears, another goal, another improvement, another future promise, and happiness moves further away again. This pattern is very common. It happens because many people misunderstand where happiness actually comes from. They believe happiness is created by external conditions. But conditions change constantly. Success can bring joy, but it can also bring new pressure. Comfort can create peace, but it can also lead to boredom. Because life is always changing, happiness that depends entirely on external events becomes unstable. Understanding the law of life changes this perspective. Happiness is not something waiting in the future. It is something experienced in the present. This does not mean ignoring ambition. Goals can still be important. Progress can still be meaningful. But happiness does not need to wait for perfection. It can exist alongside effort. Many people overlook this idea. They postpone joy while working toward improvement. But life is made of present moments. If happiness is always delayed, those moments pass without appreciation. Another misunderstanding about happiness is the belief that it must feel intense. People imagine happiness as excitement, as constant pleasure, as endless enthusiasm. But real happiness often appears quietly. It appears as calm, as contentment, as a sense of balance. These quieter forms of happiness are easier to miss, because the mind often searches for dramatic feelings. Yet calm satisfaction is often more stable than excitement. Excitement rises quickly and fades quickly. Contentment lasts longer. Understanding this helps people appreciate simple experiences. A peaceful morning, a meaningful conversation, a moment of reflection. These moments often hold more genuine happiness than dramatic achievements. Another reason people struggle to feel happy is comparison. They observe the lives of others. They see achievements. They see celebrations. But they rarely see the difficulties behind those moments. Comparison creates the illusion that happiness belongs to someone else. But every life contains challenges. Every person experiences uncertainty. When someone stops measuring their life against others, happiness becomes easier to notice. Attention returns to personal experiences. Another important part of happiness is gratitude. Gratitude changes how the mind interprets life. Without gratitude, the mind focuses only on what is missing. It constantly searches for improvement. Improvement is valuable, but when improvement becomes the only focus, satisfaction disappears. Gratitude balances this. It reminds the mind to recognize what already exists. The ability to learn, the ability to grow, the presence of relationships. These things often go unnoticed until gratitude appears. Another misunderstanding about happiness is the belief that problems must disappear before peace can exist. But problems are part of life. Every person faces difficulties. If happiness requires a problem-free life, it will rarely appear. But when someone understands that challenges are natural, happiness becomes more flexible. It can exist even during imperfect moments. Another important factor is attention. Where attention goes, experience follows. If attention constantly focuses on worries, life feels heavy. If attention notices small positive moments, life feels lighter. This does not mean ignoring real problems. It means balancing awareness, recognizing both challenges and opportunities. Another powerful idea about happiness is presence. Many people live mentally in the future. They think about what must happen next, or they return repeatedly to the past. But happiness rarely exists in those places. It appears most often in the present moment. When someone becomes fully present, even simple experiences become meaningful. A walk outside, a quiet evening, a conversation without distraction. Presence allows these moments to feel complete. Another important aspect of happiness is purpose. People feel more fulfilled when their actions carry meaning. Meaning often comes from contributing to something larger than personal comfort, helping others, creating something valuable, learning something new. These experiences create deeper satisfaction. Another reason happiness feels distant for some people is pressure. They believe they must always feel happy. When sadness appears, they worry something is wrong. But emotions move naturally. Happiness rises and falls, just like every other feeling. Accepting this movement removes unnecessary stress. Instead of chasing constant happiness, you allow emotions to flow. And when the mind stops forcing happiness, it often appears more naturally. Another powerful source of happiness is connection. Human beings are social. Meaningful relationships provide emotional support. They offer understanding. They create shared experiences. When relationships are nurtured with patience and care, happiness grows. Another aspect of happiness involves personal growth. People often feel satisfied when they see themselves improving, learning new skills, understanding life more deeply. These experiences create a sense of progress. Progress brings motivation. Motivation brings energy. Another important truth about happiness is that it is not always loud. Sometimes it appears as quiet peace, a sense that life is manageable, a feeling that you are moving in the right direction. This quiet happiness is often more stable than intense excitement. Another challenge people face is the belief that happiness must be earned through struggle. They believe they must work endlessly before they deserve peace. But happiness is not a reward for perfection. It is a natural experience that appears when the mind relaxes its constant demands. Another important lesson is that happiness grows when people accept life as it is. Acceptance removes unnecessary resistance. Resistance creates tension. Without that tension, calm appears. Calm allows appreciation. Appreciation creates happiness. Another way to understand happiness is through balance. Too much focus on the future creates anxiety. Too much focus on the past creates regret. Balance brings attention to the present. The present is where life happens. Another powerful shift happens when someone realizes happiness is not something to capture permanently. It is something to experience repeatedly. Small moments, small realizations, small connections. Together they form a meaningful life. Another important truth is that happiness grows through simplicity. Complicated expectations often create disappointment. Simple appreciation creates peace. When someone begins to notice simple experiences, life feels richer. Another benefit of understanding happiness is emotional resilience. When happiness no longer depends on perfect conditions, setbacks feel less destructive. You recover more quickly. Another powerful aspect of happiness is authenticity. When people live according to their values, inner conflict decreases. Inner harmony supports peace. Another important part of this law is that happiness grows when the mind stops constantly searching for it. Sometimes happiness appears when the search itself relaxes. When someone becomes fully engaged in the present moment. Another truth is that happiness does not remove challenges, but it changes how challenges feel. When someone feels content and balanced, problems appear smaller. Solutions appear more easily. Another realization comes when people stop waiting for the perfect life. They begin appreciating the life that is already unfolding. And once appreciation begins, happiness becomes easier to notice. Not because life suddenly becomes flawless, but because the mind finally recognizes the quiet value of each moment. Understanding this truth changes everything. Life becomes less about chasing happiness and more about allowing it to appear naturally in the moments that already exist. Chapter 9. Why simplicity makes life easier. Many people believe life becomes better when it becomes bigger, more achievements, more possessions, more responsibilities. They imagine success as something large and impressive, but something interesting often happens as life becomes more complicated. Stress increases. Time feels shorter. Peace becomes harder to find. This happens because complexity creates pressure. More responsibilities mean more decisions. More possessions mean more maintenance. More expectations mean more worry about outcomes. The mind becomes crowded. When the mind becomes crowded, clarity disappears. This is why simplicity is so powerful. Simplicity does not mean living without ambition. It means removing what is unnecessary. When unnecessary things disappear, attention becomes focused. Focus makes life easier. Think about how people organize their time. Many days become filled with tasks, meetings, obligations, endless distractions. Some of these activities are important, but many are not essential. They fill space without adding real value. Over time, constant activity creates exhaustion. People become busy without feeling fulfilled. Simplicity invites a different question. Instead of asking how much can be done, it asks what truly matters. When someone focuses on what matters most, life becomes clearer. Clarity removes confusion. Another place where simplicity changes life is in decision-making. Too many choices can overwhelm the mind. When every option feels possible, deciding becomes stressful. But when priorities become simple, decisions become easier. You evaluate choices according to what matters most. Everything else becomes less urgent. Another area where complexity creates struggle is material possessions. Many people believe more possessions will create happiness. They collect objects that promise comfort or status, but each possession carries responsibility. It must be stored, maintained, protected. Eventually, possessions begin to demand attention. Simplicity shifts focus from quantity to quality. Instead of collecting many things, you choose a few meaningful ones. This creates space. Physical space often creates mental space. Another place where simplicity helps is in communication. People sometimes use complicated words or long explanations. They try to appear intelligent or impressive. But clear communication is usually simple. Simple language creates understanding. When ideas are expressed clearly, connection becomes easier. Another powerful area where simplicity changes life is goals. Many people try to pursue too many goals at once. They want to improve every area of life immediately: health, career, finances, relationships. But spreading attention across too many directions weakens progress. Simplicity encourages focus. Choose a few meaningful goals. Give them full attention. This increases the chances of success. Another place where simplicity matters is thinking. The mind often creates complex stories. It imagines worst-case scenarios. It predicts problems that may never appear. This habit creates anxiety. Simplicity in thinking means returning to what is actually happening now. Instead of imagining endless possibilities, you focus on the present situation. This reduces mental noise. Another important benefit of simplicity is emotional calm. When life becomes too complicated, emotions become unstable. There are too many demands, too many expectations. Simplifying commitments creates breathing space. In that space, emotions settle. Another area where simplicity transforms life is habits. Small habits repeated consistently often produce powerful results. But many people try to change everything at once. They create complicated routines. Soon the routine becomes difficult to maintain. Simplicity encourages small actions. Small actions repeated daily create lasting change. Another place where simplicity improves life is in relationships. Complicated relationships often include constant drama, misunderstandings, unspoken expectations. Healthy relationships usually rely on simple principles: honesty, respect, patience. When these principles guide interactions, relationships become more peaceful. Another area where simplicity helps is attention. Attention is limited. The more distractions that compete for attention, the less focus remains. Phones, notifications, endless information. When someone reduces distractions, attention becomes stronger. Stronger attention improves learning. It improves creativity. Another powerful benefit of simplicity is gratitude. When life becomes less crowded with distractions, small experiences become noticeable. The taste of food, the warmth of sunlight, a quiet moment. These experiences often create deeper satisfaction than complicated pleasures. Another important lesson about simplicity is that it requires courage. Society often celebrates complexity, busy schedules, constant achievement. Simplicity may appear ordinary, but simplicity requires confidence. Confidence to focus on what truly matters. Another area where simplicity helps is problem solving. Complex thinking can create confusion. When someone steps back and asks a simple question, clarity appears. What is the real problem? Often the real issue is much simpler than it first appeared. Another place where simplicity changes life is stress management. Stress often comes from trying to manage too many things at once. Reducing commitments reduces pressure. When pressure decreases, energy returns. Another benefit of simplicity is freedom. When life becomes less complicated, you gain more control over time. Time becomes available for reflection, for creativity, for meaningful experiences. Another powerful effect of simplicity is focus on values. When distractions disappear, it becomes easier to see what truly matters. Family, growth, contribution. Values guide decisions. When decisions follow values, life feels more meaningful. Another place where simplicity improves life is learning. Complex explanations often confuse. Simple explanations reveal understanding. When someone truly understands something, they can explain it simply. Another important aspect of simplicity is patience. Simple progress often appears slow, but slow progress is often steady. Steady progress creates lasting results. Another benefit of simplicity is reduced anxiety. When expectations become simpler, disappointment becomes smaller. Life becomes easier to manage. Another powerful idea is that simplicity allows deeper experiences. When attention is not divided, experiences feel richer. A conversation becomes more meaningful. A moment becomes more memorable. Another place where simplicity creates peace is identity. Many people try to become impressive. They create complicated images of success. but identity can be simple. Being honest, being kind, being curious. These qualities create genuine respect. Another important lesson about simplicity is that it removes unnecessary struggle. Struggle often appears when life becomes overloaded. When unnecessary elements are removed, effort becomes lighter. Another area where simplicity changes perspective is happiness. Many people believe happiness requires many achievements. But happiness often grows from simple experiences, connection, purpose, presence. Another powerful truth is that simplicity reveals clarity. When noise disappears, understanding appears. This clarity guides better decisions. Another important benefit of simplicity is balance. Balanced lives contain space. Space for rest. Space for reflection. Space for growth. Another realization appears when someone practices simplicity regularly. Life begins to feel manageable. Problems feel smaller. Solutions appear more quickly. Another important idea is that simplicity is not about removing everything. It is about keeping what truly matters. When someone focuses on what matters most, life becomes meaningful. Meaning reduces confusion. Confusion often creates stress. Another final truth about simplicity is that it supports freedom. Freedom from constant distraction. Freedom from unnecessary pressure. Freedom to live intentionally. When life becomes simpler, attention returns to what truly matters. And when attention rests on what matters most, life naturally becomes easier to understand. Simplicity does not remove every challenge, but it removes the unnecessary ones. And without those extra burdens, the path forward becomes much clearer. Chapter 10. The freedom of taking responsibility. Many people believe responsibility is a burden. They imagine responsibility as pressure, as something heavy. They believe life would feel easier if they had fewer responsibilities. But there is another side to responsibility that many people overlook. Responsibility can also create freedom. At first, this idea may sound strange. How can responsibility create freedom? The answer becomes clear when you understand what responsibility really means. Responsibility means recognizing what belongs to you, your choices, your actions, your reactions. When you accept responsibility for these areas, your life becomes clearer. Without responsibility, people often fall into blame. They blame circumstances. They blame other people. They blame bad luck. Blame can feel comforting for a moment. It removes pressure, but it also removes power. When someone believes everything is controlled by outside forces, they feel helpless. They wait for life to change before they can improve. This waiting creates frustration. Responsibility changes this pattern. When someone accepts responsibility, they reclaim influence. They realize that while they cannot control every situation, they can control how they respond. This realization creates strength. Think about a difficult situation. Perhaps someone criticizes you. If you believe your emotional state depends entirely on their opinion, you feel powerless. But if you accept responsibility for your response, something changes. You can decide how much that criticism matters. You can decide whether to learn from it or ignore it. Responsibility gives you that choice. Another example appears in personal habits. Habits shape daily life. Eating habits affect health. Work habits affect progress. Thinking habits affect emotional well-being. If someone blames circumstances for every habit, change becomes difficult. But when someone accepts responsibility for habits, improvement becomes possible. Responsibility turns awareness into action. Another powerful effect of responsibility is clarity. When you accept responsibility, excuses become less attractive. Instead of asking why something happened, you begin asking what can be done next. This shift moves the mind from frustration to solution. Solutions create progress. Progress creates motivation. Another place where responsibility changes life is in relationships. Healthy relationships require mutual effort. When one person constantly blames the other for every problem, communication breaks down. But when both people accept responsibility for their actions, understanding grows. They listen more carefully. They speak more honestly. Responsibility creates respect. Another area where responsibility creates freedom is emotional control. Many people believe emotions control their behavior. They say anger made them react. They say stress made them behave poorly. But emotions are signals, not commands. Responsibility allows someone to observe emotions without being ruled by them. They pause. They think. They choose how to respond. This ability creates emotional maturity. Another powerful effect of responsibility appears in learning. Mistakes happen to everyone. But the way people respond to mistakes shapes their growth. When someone blames others for every mistake, learning stops. But when someone accepts responsibility, mistakes become valuable lessons. Lessons create improvement. Another important part of responsibility is honesty. Honesty with yourself about your actions and choices. This honesty may feel uncomfortable at first, but it also creates clarity. Clarity helps you see where change is possible. Another benefit of responsibility is confidence. Confidence does not appear from pretending to be perfect. It appears from knowing that you can handle challenges. Responsibility builds that belief. Each time you face a problem and take action, confidence grows. Another place where responsibility matters is time. Time is one of the most valuable resources in life. Everyone receives the same number of hours each day, but how those hours are used depends on choices. When someone takes responsibility for their time, priorities become clearer. They spend more time on meaningful activities, less time on distractions. Another area where responsibility transforms life is personal growth. Growth requires effort. Effort requires commitment. When someone takes responsibility for their development, they stop waiting for motivation. They create structure. They practice regularly. Progress becomes consistent. Another powerful idea about responsibility is that it removes victim thinking. Victim thinking tells a person that life is happening to them. Responsibility reminds them that they still have influence, even in difficult situations, even when circumstances are unfair. Responsibility does not deny hardship, but it refuses to surrender personal power. Another place where responsibility creates freedom is decision-making. When someone believes others must decide for them, they feel trapped. But when they accept responsibility for decisions, freedom appears. Freedom includes risk, but it also includes possibility. Another important lesson about responsibility is balance. Responsibility does not mean blaming yourself for everything. Some things are outside personal control. Economic changes, natural events, other people's actions. Understanding responsibility means recognizing what belongs to you and what does not. Your response belongs to you. External events may not. This balance prevents unnecessary guilt. Another benefit of responsibility is resilience. Resilient people face challenges with determination. They do not collapse under pressure. They focus on what they can improve. This mindset creates strength during difficult times. Another powerful aspect of responsibility is purpose. When someone takes responsibility for their life, they become active participants in their story. They create direction. They make decisions that align with their values. Purpose grows from these choices. Another place where responsibility changes life is self-respect. When you keep promises to yourself, self-respect increases. Keeping commitments builds trust within your own mind. That trust strengthens discipline. Another important truth about responsibility is that it requires courage. It is easier to blame circumstances, but accepting responsibility requires honesty. Honesty about mistakes, honesty about effort. This courage leads to growth. Another area where responsibility improves life is leadership. True leaders accept responsibility for their actions. They do not hide behind excuses. This attitude builds trust among others. Another powerful effect of responsibility is clarity about goals. When someone takes responsibility for their direction, they stop drifting. They choose meaningful goals. They take steps toward them. Another important lesson is that responsibility simplifies life. Instead of blaming many external factors, you focus on your own actions. This focus reduces confusion. Another place where responsibility creates peace is forgiveness. When someone takes responsibility for their mistakes, forgiveness becomes possible. Growth replaces regret. Another benefit of responsibility is independence. Independent people do not depend entirely on others to shape their lives. They create opportunities. They adapt when situations change. Another powerful idea is that responsibility increases gratitude. When you recognize your role in creating positive outcomes, appreciation grows. You see how effort shapes life. Another important truth is that responsibility grows over time. No one begins with perfect awareness, but each experience teaches something new. Learning strengthens responsibility. Another powerful realization appears when someone practices responsibility consistently. Life begins to feel less chaotic. Decisions feel clearer. Confidence grows stronger. This transformation does not happen instantly, but it grows steadily. Responsibility turns life from something that happens to you into something you actively shape. It reminds you that while you cannot control every event, you can influence how your story unfolds. And that influence creates freedom. Freedom to learn, freedom to grow, freedom to live intentionally. When you understand this, responsibility no longer feels heavy. It becomes one of the most empowering forces in life, because it places the direction of your life back into your own hands. Chapter 11. Trusting the process of life. Many people feel uneasy when they cannot see the full path ahead. They want certainty. They want guarantees. They want to know exactly how things will unfold. But life rarely provides that level of clarity. Most journeys begin with only the next step visible. This uncertainty often creates anxiety. The mind asks many questions. What if things go wrong? What if the effort is wasted? What if the outcome is not what I hoped for? These questions can make progress feel risky. Yet uncertainty is one of the most natural parts of life. Every meaningful path contains unknown elements. No one knows exactly what tomorrow will bring. Understanding this truth helps reduce the pressure to predict everything. Instead of trying to control every outcome, you begin learning to trust the process. Trusting the process does not mean ignoring effort. Effort remains essential, but it means recognizing that growth unfolds step by step. Many important changes happen quietly. Skills develop gradually. Understanding deepens slowly. Opportunities appear when preparation meets the right moment. But these moments cannot always be predicted. They often appear unexpectedly. Think about how people learn complex abilities. At the beginning, progress feels slow. Mistakes appear frequently. Improvement may seem invisible, but beneath the surface, learning is happening. Each attempt strengthens understanding. Each mistake reveals something useful. With enough patience, the results eventually become visible. Trusting the process allows someone to continue during those early stages when progress feels uncertain. Another example appears in personal transformation. Many people want to become more confident, more disciplined, or more calm, but these qualities do not appear instantly. They develop through repeated practice. Each time someone faces fear and continues forward, confidence grows. Each time someone maintains discipline, strength increases. These small moments accumulate, but the changes are often subtle at first. Trusting the process allows these small improvements to continue building. Another place where trusting the process becomes powerful is in relationships. Trust and understanding do not appear instantly between people. They grow through shared experiences, through communication, through patience. When someone expects immediate perfection in relationships, disappointment often appears. But when someone allows relationships to evolve naturally, connection becomes stronger. Another important area where trust matters is career development. Many people expect their path to be clear from the beginning, but most successful journeys include unexpected turns. People change direction. They discover new interests. They adapt to new opportunities. Trusting the process allows someone to remain open to these possibilities. Instead of fearing change, they explore it. Another benefit of trusting the process is reduced anxiety. When someone believes every step must produce immediate results, pressure increases. But when someone understands that progress accumulates over time, the mind becomes calmer. Effort continues without constant worry about outcomes. Another powerful aspect of trusting the process is resilience. Resilient people understand that setbacks are part of growth. They do not interpret every difficulty as failure. Instead, they see challenges as information that helps improve the next step. This mindset prevents discouragement. Another place where trusting the process helps is creativity. Creative work often includes long periods of uncertainty. Ideas do not always appear quickly. Projects evolve slowly. Trusting the process allows creativity to unfold without forcing results. Another important idea is that trust grows through experience. At first, uncertainty may feel uncomfortable, but as someone sees how persistence leads to improvement, trust increases. They begin to recognize patterns. Effort produces learning. Learning produces progress. Progress produces opportunity. Another powerful shift occurs when someone stops measuring progress too frequently. Constant evaluation can create frustration, because meaningful progress sometimes happens slowly. Trusting the process means continuing effort, even when immediate results are not visible. Another area where trust is essential is personal healing. Emotional recovery from difficult experiences takes time. There is no instant solution. Trusting the healing process allows emotions to settle gradually. With patience, peace returns. Another benefit of trusting the process is flexibility. When someone trusts life's unfolding, they become more adaptable. Unexpected changes become less frightening. Adaptability strengthens resilience. Another powerful lesson about trusting the process is humility. It reminds us that not everything can be predicted or controlled. Life includes surprises. Some surprises are difficult, others become unexpected blessings. Remaining open to these possibilities creates a sense of curiosity. Curiosity transforms uncertainty into exploration. Another important aspect of trusting the process is consistency. Small actions repeated regularly often produce powerful results. Daily learning, daily effort, daily reflection. These actions may seem small, but over time they create transformation. Trusting the process allows these small steps to continue. Another place where trust becomes valuable is decision-making. Sometimes the perfect choice is not immediately clear. Waiting for absolute certainty can delay progress. Trusting the process means making thoughtful decisions and learning from the results. Each step reveals new information. This information guides future choices. Another benefit of trusting the process is reduced perfectionism. Perfectionism demands flawless results. Trusting the process accepts gradual improvement. Improvement becomes the focus instead of perfection. Another powerful idea is that life often reveals meaning over time. Experiences that once seemed confusing may later become valuable lessons. Trusting the process allows patience until that meaning becomes clear. Another important lesson is that growth rarely follows a straight line. There are periods of progress. There are periods of rest. There are moments of difficulty. All of these moments are part of the journey. Trusting the process means accepting this rhythm. Another powerful result of trust is inner calm. When someone believes that effort and time will lead to growth, they feel less pressure to rush. Calm effort replaces anxious effort. Another place where trust becomes important is in learning new perspectives. Sometimes understanding arrives slowly. Ideas need time to settle. Trusting the process allows deeper insight to emerge. Another benefit of trusting the process is persistence. Persistence keeps someone moving forward when motivation fades. Motivation may come and go, but trust allows effort to continue. Another powerful realization appears when someone reflects on past experiences. Often the most valuable lessons came from situations that once felt uncertain. Challenges created strength. Mistakes created wisdom. Recognizing this pattern builds confidence in the process of life. Another important idea is that trusting the process does not mean ignoring problems. It means addressing problems with patience and persistence. Solutions often appear through steady effort. Another powerful aspect of trust is gratitude. When someone trusts life's unfolding, they appreciate each step. Even difficult steps can carry lessons. Another truth is that trust transforms how time feels. When someone constantly rushes toward the future, the present feels incomplete. But when someone trusts the process, the present becomes meaningful. Each step becomes part of a larger journey. Another powerful insight appears when someone realizes that life does not require perfect planning. It requires awareness, effort, and openness. The path becomes clearer as you walk it. Trusting the process means continuing forward, even when the entire journey is not visible. Another final truth is that every meaningful achievement in life required patience at some point. Patience allowed learning. Learning allowed growth. Growth created opportunity. When you understand this pattern, uncertainty becomes less intimidating. You begin to see life as a process unfolding step by step. And when you trust that process, the pressure to control every moment fades. You continue moving forward with calm effort, knowing that progress often appears quietly, and that with enough patience, the path ahead will reveal itself exactly when it needs to. Chapter 12. Living with the Law of Life. By now, a pattern has begun to appear. Life becomes easier not when every problem disappears. Life becomes easier when you understand how life actually works. Many people spend years fighting the natural flow of life. They try to control every outcome. They resist change. They expect certainty in a world that is constantly moving. This struggle creates pressure. But when someone begins to understand the law of life, the pressure slowly fades. The law itself is not complicated. Life is a process. It moves through change. It moves through growth. It moves through cycles of learning. Once you understand this, your relationship with life transforms. You stop expecting perfection. You stop demanding certainty. Instead, you begin to work with life. Working with life creates peace. It allows you to move through situations with patience and clarity. One of the most important shifts is perspective. When challenges appear, the mind no longer reacts with panic. Instead, it asks what this moment can teach. This question changes everything. Every experience contains information. Success reveals what works. Failure reveals what needs improvement. Both experiences become valuable. Another powerful shift happens with expectations. Earlier in life, expectations may have been rigid. Plans had to unfold perfectly. People had to behave exactly as imagined. But understanding the law of life softens these expectations. Flexibility appears. Flexibility reduces disappointment. Instead of resisting change, you adapt. Adaptation creates resilience. Resilient people recover quickly from difficulty. They see obstacles as temporary. They trust that every experience contributes to growth. Another important part of living with this law is awareness. Awareness allows you to notice your thoughts. When the mind begins to resist reality, awareness gently redirects attention. Instead of arguing with what has already happened, you focus on what can be done next. This small shift creates enormous relief. Energy returns. Clarity improves. Another change appears in the way you approach goals. Goals remain important. They create direction. But goals no longer become the only source of happiness. Happiness begins to exist alongside the journey. Each step forward becomes meaningful. Each lesson becomes valuable. This balanced mindset prevents burnout. You continue pursuing improvement without losing peace. Another transformation appears in relationships. When you understand the law of life, you recognize that people are also learning and growing. Everyone carries their own challenges, their own fears, their own experiences. This understanding creates compassion. Compassion strengthens connections. It replaces judgment with patience. Another powerful shift appears in emotional life. Emotions still appear: joy, frustration, hope, disappointment. But emotions no longer feel overwhelming. You observe them. You learn from them. You allow them to pass naturally. This emotional flexibility creates stability. Another area where the law of life changes everything is identity. Many people once believed they were fixed. They believed their past defined them. But understanding the process of life reveals something important. People evolve, skills develop, mindsets change, identity becomes fluid. This realization opens new possibilities. You are not trapped by who you once were. You are continuously becoming someone new. Another benefit of living with this law is simplicity. Life becomes less complicated, not because challenges disappear, but because unnecessary struggles disappear. You stop carrying regrets from the past. You stop fearing every possible future outcome. Attention returns to the present moment. The present moment becomes the center of experience. Another important shift appears in the way time is experienced. When someone constantly rushes toward the future, life feels incomplete. But when someone understands the law of life, they appreciate each stage. Learning becomes meaningful. Growth becomes satisfying. Even waiting becomes easier. Patience grows naturally. Another powerful change appears in decision-making. Decisions become less stressful. You no longer demand perfect certainty. You gather information. You make thoughtful choices. And you remain open to adjusting when new information appears. This flexible mindset improves outcomes. Another area where this law changes life is failure. Failure once felt like proof of inadequacy, but now it becomes feedback. Feedback improves the next attempt. This mindset protects confidence. Confidence grows through experience. Another powerful effect appears in creativity. When someone stops fearing mistakes, creativity expands. Ideas flow more easily. Experiments become possible. Innovation grows. Another important benefit is resilience. Resilient people trust their ability to adapt. They know that life includes both opportunity and difficulty. Because they trust the process, they remain steady during uncertainty. Another transformation appears in gratitude. When someone understands the law of life, they begin noticing the quiet value of everyday moments. Small experiences become meaningful. A conversation, a lesson, a moment of calm. Gratitude deepens appreciation. Another powerful realization is that happiness is not something to chase endlessly. Happiness grows naturally when life is approached with understanding. Understanding reduces conflict between expectations and reality. When conflict decreases, peace appears. Another important idea is that growth never stops. Even after understanding the law of life, new lessons appear. Life continues teaching. This ongoing learning keeps the mind curious. Curiosity keeps life interesting. Another powerful shift appears in confidence. Confidence grows from trusting your ability to navigate life. You may not control every situation, but you trust your ability to respond wisely. This trust removes much of the fear that once existed. Another area where the law of life brings freedom is acceptance. Acceptance does not mean giving up. It means seeing clearly. Once you see clearly, action becomes more effective. Acceptance and action work together. Another important transformation appears in inner peace. Peace is no longer dependent on perfect circumstances. It becomes a steady presence, a quiet calm that remains even when challenges appear. Another powerful lesson is that life rewards consistency. Small actions repeated over time create meaningful results. Learning every day, improving gradually, remaining patient. These habits create lasting success. Another realization appears when someone reflects on the journey. Many of the struggles that once felt overwhelming now appear smaller. Perspective has grown. Wisdom has developed. This wisdom is the result of understanding the law of life. Another final truth becomes clear. Life was never meant to be controlled completely. It was meant to be experienced, to be learned from, to be lived with awareness. When someone understands this, they stop fighting every change. They stop resisting every uncertainty. Instead, they participate in the unfolding process of life. They move forward with curiosity, with patience, with trust. And in that state, something remarkable happens. Life still includes challenges, but it no longer feels overwhelming because the mind has stopped creating unnecessary struggle. The law of life has become clear, and once you truly understand it, everything does become easier. Not because life changes, but because you have